You just have them talk. Not do anything.
Okay. Oh, yeah. It's there.
Okay, we'll start with the land acknowledgement, followed by the preamble. We are gathering on lands that have been home to First Nations people from time immemorial. We acknowledge that we now call Richmond Hill is on the treaty lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Mississauga and the Chippewa nations of the Williams Treaty. We also recognize that we are on part of the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat. We would also like to acknowledge all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people from all across North America, also known as Turtle Island, who now reside in the city of Richmond Hill. We are committed to rebuilding constructive and cooperative relationships with them all. The preamble.
Good evening. We ask all committee members, city staff, and members of the audience to please silence your cell phones. The Committee of Adjustment for the City of Richmond Hill has been appointed by council to consider applications for minor variance and consent within the jurisdiction of the Planning Act. The chair will call the applicant to present their application and will allow members of the public to comment. When members of the public approach the podium, please do so one person at a time. State your full name and address to the committee before speaking. When speaking, please address all comments through the chair. Once the committee makes a decision on an application, no further discussion is allowed. No one other than the applicant, the municipality, certain public bodies, and the minister will be allowed to appeal municipal decisions to the tribunal within 20 days of the making of the decision. All appeals and associated fees must be filed directly with the Secretary Treasurer in accordance with the Planning Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to the Richmond Hills Committee of Adjustments meeting, first meeting of 2025. So Happy New Year. We are joined today by our Secretary Treasurer, Ms. Courtney, and her assistant, Linda Sikas. From the Planning Department, we have Samantha Ewing joining us today. And do we have any conflicts of interest this evening with any members? None. Are there any requests for adjourns or adjournment? We have the applicant here, so I'm assuming there are none.
Mr. Chair, there are none.
Thank you. With that, we will hear our applications today. Seeing they're all located at 305 16th Avenue with different blocks, we can do all of them in one presentation if the applicant agrees.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Please proceed. Yes,
Could lot 21 be separated or come at the end?
if you like, sure. So as requested by member Suzanne Payne, we would like, which one, what's the file number on the last one? Is that the one you meant? MV 24-83? It has a different planner, all this. No,
MV 24-65.
MV 24, it's the second one. Not anything.
Second last.
Oh, second one. Yeah, I pulled it out. We'll do that last.
Thanks.
Okay, Jim?
That's fine.
All right.
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
That makes sense.
So we'll hear the first five and then we'll hear number 6 at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, city staff. First of all, Happy New Year, as the chair said. I hope everybody had an enjoyable holiday. I did provide, as Mrs. Sikis has put on the in front of everyone, I did provide a short PowerPoint presentation that I would like to go through and provide some clarity that would make everybody's life a little easier in terms of what we're dealing with, given that number of applications for, as the chair said, for one property. So as you can see, the application before you does have the municipal address of 305 16th Avenue. It's located on the south side of 16th, directly opposite Berwick in a recently signalized intersection. The application before you seeks to provide for two consent applications with associated variance applications. And then, as Member Payne said, there's a further one, a standalone for one of the existing lots located at the entrance of this subdivision. So Linda, if you can go to the next one. So that just gives you the parameters. So this is the plan of subdivision. It's a multiple lot plan with obviously with a recently approved and future municipal right-of-way in the form of a cul-de-sac that will originate at 16th Avenue and terminate right basically at the front of these three lots that are subject to these applications. I wanted to show you where this block is relative to the overall draft plan of subdivision. So Linda, if you can go to the next one. So, Mr. Chair, there's the two consent applications, and this is the remnant block that is part of the register plan of subdivision. And Mr. Chair, one of the important points, and it was notified in the staff report, this was always intended as part of the approval of the overall draft plan, that this block, which is at the end of the cul-de-sac, will facilitate three new lots to facilitate the construction of three single detached dwellings. So the circumstances behind this, Mr. Chair, which is part of the reason why you have the variances specifically for the lot frontage, is obviously the irregular, first of all, the irregular front lot lines that have been created given their location at the terminus of the cul-de-sac. And that's where you get the irregular frontage, which basically causes these lots to narrow at the front. And then as you move further to the west into the plan, you can obviously see that the lots themselves widen to allow the framework to facilitate the construction of the three new single detached dwellings. And then the other part of the reason why the irregularity of these lots, Mr. Chair, is you could see the line to the west, where basically you could see the depth measurement, where this subdivision terminates. You see the sort of round, partially round lot line where it says Part 2. You can see the line, and that, Mr. Chair, is an open space conservation land that had to be zoned as open space, and it was conveyed to the Conservation Authority as part of the approval. And that is to protect for the sensitivity of those lands, Mr. Chair. So that's why you see these lots having the end of the terminus of the cul-de-sac to the east, and then the easterly limits of the open space block to the west. So I wanted to give you those parameters to give you a better understanding of how these lots were created. So, Mr. Chair, you see the first severance, Part 1, and I've highlighted that in red. So that is the first consent application. And then the next one, Linda, if you could just go back to that. And then, of course, the next one would create the Part 3, then leaving the middle block, Part 2, as the third lot. So that's what you have before you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the lots and how they're configured, where they're located on the plan. So in terms of the frontages themselves, Mr. Chair, although you do notice, obviously, the numbers themselves from 15 meters down to 6.87, and then for the second lot from 15 to 10.28. Obviously, that's caused by the irregular front lot line. And as you move further into the lot, obviously it widens out to comply with the 15-meter minimum requirement. And Mr. Chair, other than seeking the maximum interior garage width, there are no other variances needed for the proposed dwellings to be constructed on these lands. So the configuration of these lots, albeit for the lot frontage reduction, the owner, the applicant is able to facilitate the construction of appropriately designed and sized dwellings without requiring any, what I consider to be major variances to allow the construction of the proposed single detached dwellings. So that, Mr. Chair, is my explanation as to what's before you for the 2 consents and the 3 associated minor variances. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that very good and detailed explanation. We don't have any audience today, I'm assuming. So we'll see if there is any comments from the planning department in that case.
For you, Mr. Chair, no.
Okay, I will begin with one question and then I'll open it to my members. You mentioned the Conservation Authority keeping the west end of the property, but I noticed that in your severance red lines, it's been given to the middle lot, which is part 2.
Yes.
Are they owners or is the Conservation Authority owners of that property is my question to you.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right. It's part 2, the middle part that has control of that open space, but that portion at the rear is zoned as open space, so it is off limits to any development abilities.
So my question, once again, whoever owns the house on part 2 will own that land?
That's my understanding, Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just
Thank you for that clarification, yes.
any other comments from our members? Yes, Mr. DeRetzi.
Through the chair, I just wanted to point out that the frontages that are noted on the staff reports for the benefit of everybody, I'm assuming that those frontages relate to the frontage at the setback, not the actual chord or arc length of the property line. Would that be correct?
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
To the applicant.
It's my understanding, Mr. Chair, that, and staff is here to corroborate it. Yes, you would determine what the legal lot frontage is based on the definition of the bylaw and how lot frontage is determined. And that would be, as you said, through you, Mr. Chair, to Member DeRetzi, you would step back, I believe it's 6 meters. And then you would take the measurement at that point. And then
That
you would
is
take the measurement to determine what the legal lot frontage would be.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because it's not obvious, perhaps to.
It would not be a
some of our
like you said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Typically, it's measured at the setback of the house. Okay, that's all I had. Thanks.
Any other comments from our members? Yes, Ms. Payne. Other comments from our members? Yes, Ms. Payne.
So the imaging so court, the imaging the circle court, there, the circle,
Is it hard to tell how it's configured, but would snow clearance equipment be able to go around that tight little circle? Would garbage trucks and waste management trucks be able to make that circle?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a very good question, Member Payne. So the city of Richmond Hill has design standards for cul-de-sacs. So that design would have had to have been completely in accordance with the city standards at the time of subdivision and zoning approvals. So yes, they would. Both, that's excellent for both waste and for snow clearance purposes. So
I might add
there's a minimum radius.
that fire truck is required to go enter. It's basically governed by the fire truck turning radius. The cul-de-sacs like that.
Through the chair.
Yes. go ahead.
Yep, through the chair. Just for the record, the radius is measured as 19 meters around the bulb, which is consistent with the municipal standard for bulbs.
Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Gossi.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to ask, what's the logic behind assigning all of the land that has been the protected land under the Conservation Authority to the middle lot and not just extending the lines equally for each of the properties?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's an excellent question. At that time, it was discussed very diligently between the applicant, the city, and the TRCA. And it was felt that it would be a lot easier from a management perspective and preservation to put it under one owner rather than three separate owners who may have different ideas and abilities to protect for that land. So the theory behind it was to, through you, Mr. Chair, was to give it to the one owner, and that way it would be more simpler and easier to maintain this as per the requirements to follow the policies of the TRCA.
Okay, any other
Yeah,
questions?
through you,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just had another question. So typically with this type of arrangement, is this something where there's a separation fence? Or is it just a chain link fence? Is there any fence at all that's being planned for those properties that abut up against the Conservation Authority land?
There is typically a separation required in the form of fencing. So yes, there would be a requirement to delineate the differences between what I call the developable land versus the non-developable. Yes, sir, that would be
Follow
delineated.
that line.
Yes. That
Ms.
is
Payne?
correct.
Thank you. Through you to planning, future owners of property, part two of this plan, future owners. How would they become aware that they're purchasing a place on a floodplain, a hazard?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to committee member, that's a very good question. So through the subdivision creation, I believe there will be wording in the agreement to include wording when they sell to the property owners to identify that this needs to be open to the public knowledge so that they're aware when they're making the purchase. I haven't looked at the agreement, so I can't speak on that right now. But I will also say that it is designated in our official plans as well, and it is zoned accordingly to protect these lands and to maintain them as natural features.
Just
Yes, go ahead.
following on from that, I noted as I was reading that there was a very good description of that on page 3 of CN 2415, where it talks about plan condition number 73, stipulates ownership of the floodplain hazard and buffer area must remain consolidated under a single property owner and not be fragmented. However, I didn't see any of that wording in the minor variance application. It was almost like it didn't exist. So I was worried that future owner or purchaser would really have to dig to find that out. I don't know. Does the public record? And maybe that's not really purview of this committee, but
So with the lot creation, it would maintain it as one property, and then it will still be protected through the designation as well as the zoning in our official plan. And zoning bylaw.
And I guess the chain link fence should raise questions anyway, so. All right, thank you.
Any other comments? If not, I would request a motion for the first 5 applications. Yes, Mr. Director.
Through the chair, I would like to make a motion that applications CN-24-14, CN-24-15, MV-24-31, MV-24-32,
Oh, I didn't know that we were doing the variances all at once.
Yeah.
5 applications.
The
And
first 5.
Oh, well, then I would have more questions.
You do? Okay.
Okay.
We will just
Sure.
hold the motion. if you
Not a
don't
problem.
mind. We will just hold the motion.
Sorry, I
Not
thought
a
you were just doing.
We only took
sorry.
out one application at your request, Ms. Payne.
Yeah.
Which was application number MV 2465. It has 2 variances. We'll deal with them during that application.
So through you, to the applicant, for MV 2432. There is a comment on page 4 from the Parks and Natural Heritage where they recommend deferral of this minor variance application because of an issue with trees and French drain. That's on page 4 of the application or the report that we have here. Could you tell me what the status is of that particular issue?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the trees, Member Payne, you're aware that obviously for a tree that is in proximity to a common lot line would have to seek and obtain an authorization by the abutting owner. So that's my understanding. That is currently in discussions between the applicant and the abutting owner, which I believe is a place of worship.
Okay.
So that's the reference to the trees.
And then there's also, well, I'm just responding to their recommendation to defer because of these outstanding issues. I'm quite aware there's a very mature, huge weeping willow there. And the French drain issue, how I don't even know what that's all about, but
Through you, Mr. Chair, the French drain issue should be, in my opinion, resolved through the condition of the consent, and that is to do with the drainage and grading plan that would be required. So that is all about the way I understood it. That's about the make sure it's appropriate drainage along that portion of the property.
so perhaps then through you, Mr. Chair, to planning staff, have you had a discussion with the Parks and Natural Heritage Department about their?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to committee member, yes, we have had some discussions with Parks. And they are recommending deferral and to attach the condition of the written consent with the minor variance as opposed to the consent application. Largely due to the minor variance having to reduce the lot frontages, which may impact the trees. However, they are also open to having the written consent. Hold on, so I'm just going through the comments as well. Hold on, so I'm just going. So they are also. Okay, my apologies. So they are requiring for, recommending deferral of the minor variance application and to wish for that to be tied with the minor variance application as opposed to the consent. Due to the minor variances having to impact the location of the trees, so the lot frontages as well as the driveway, maximum interior driveway width, can ultimately impact the proximity to the tree.
May I say something at this point, or are you still pursuing this? Go ahead. No, if you want, go ahead.
So in this particular application, MV 2432 for part 3, the width for the look at the one that was looking for the garage. It wasn't that one. I think it was 2. Part 2. The question with part 2 was why request the extra garage width at this stage, because you know how much you've got to work with. You can stay within the. No, that's not the one. Sorry. So it is part 3. Looking at the garage width. I can't find my question, but. All right, sorry.
That's fine. Take your time, that's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. So my comment in this case would be that since both the planning department and the Parks and Natural Heritage Department are requesting a deferral of this particular consent application, would your applicant be willing to do that? Because it looks like both in the conclusion of the planning report as well as in Parks and Natural Heritage comments, they would like this matter resolved before we can approve this.
Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
yeah, just sorry.
Yeah,
The
go
planning
ahead.
department has a comment. I would like to hear that. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, through you, to Mr. Chair. Alternatively, the written consent could be addressed through a condition of the minor variance application, which would allow for approval as long as we would be satisfied and committee would be satisfied to be addressed through that, and that the drainage and tree issues are reviewed before the final approval of the minor variance.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the drainage so much as about the neighbor's tree. So are you suggesting that we put a condition, a new condition in approving this?
If the committee agrees to do so, that would be an option to explore.
And how would you see that condition being worded? Or we can seek opinions from our committee staff, because what I don't want to do is approve something that is not resolved yet. So we can put a condition to approval is subject to resolution of this matter, but I would like to word it properly, and I seek some assistance or guidance in that. Members are welcome to have an input, or yourself.
Here is the wording from.
It says alternatively to the applicant may wish to consider moving the French drain, retaining wall, and other works that are encroached outside the tree. But you see, that's a recommendation. It's not a condition. It's asking you to change the design. Is that a practical thing? I'm not sure. I don't have expertise in this. I mean, but.
Yeah, through the
That's
chair.
interesting.
Yeah, under the circumstances, it may just be much simpler if this particular application be deferred and give the applicant some time to address the drainage and the relocation of that retaining wall. It's not like a very quick fix. It might take a little bit of finagling in the backyard with respect to the revised location of the swale line retaining wall. So it may take a little bit longer. So if the applicant doesn't see any issues with that, perhaps we pull this one aside and request that it be deferred, to the next meeting, or at a time when the issues can be resolved. That's just my opinion. Again,
So
rather than to
that
add a
question is
complicated-
directed to the applicant.
yes, rather than to add a complicated condition that's basically is going to serve the same purpose. They're going to still be delayed, but for the purpose of this committee, I would recommend that this particular application be deferred and let staff deal with the issue, given that the recommendations from Parks and Planning is to defer it, that we should probably just stay in line with that and keep it simple. If that's the only deferral this evening, we just pull it aside if the applicant agrees to that.
So there are two options on the table: a deferral or a suitable wording which satisfies the members, majority of the members, to approve it subject to resolution of this matter. I would like to table both of those and then we can make a decision based on that. So I once again seek wording for the condition from the experts, planning department or committee of adjustment. Yes, Mr. Rossi.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was just gonna say, to put together specific type of wording ultimately would mean we would want planning and parks to agree to it, which tells me it just needs to be deferred. I'm not sure that there's language to get that we can select. Because we would be setting the terms and conditions for parks and planning to meet or to agree to, when I think they should be the ones that should be setting the terms to agree to. So I don't believe that we should have a
Okay.
wording. I just believe we should go for deferral on this.
So if two of the members are going for deferral, I don't see this going any other way in that case.
Mr. Chair, obviously, under normal circumstances, I would have no issue with that, but obviously in this case, there's some sensitivities in terms of the timing of the committee's decision. And that's why we're here tonight for a good portion of this. So my preference would be to try to have this an appropriately worded condition that still protects the interests of both the Parks Department and Planning, to allow this issue to be addressed via the fulfillment of that condition.
I agree with you, sir, but seeing that two of the members are not in agreement with the condition to be put, you will end up getting a refusal. Yes, go ahead.
I just can't see what the condition would be.
Well, that's why I
But
was
if it's
requesting.
presented,
I
I
was
would
requesting a
consider
comment.
it, sure,
I was
I would
requesting a
consider
comment.
it, sure.
Would you
Through the
please?
chair.
Yes, Mr. Ruth.
Yeah, I think the condition could pretty much be drafted consistent with the comments of the Parks Department in a roundabout way. But my question to the applicant is, we appreciate the time sensitivity of this application. Could you speak a little bit more as to why this has to be done right now as opposed to in 30 or 60 days? I'm just trying to understand the sensitivity there, and maybe we can, as members, come up with a solution for you.
There's the agreement with the region of York about the DC freeze agreement that has a lapse time of 2 years. And that is going to lapse at the end of January. So the applicant would have to have all of their approvals in place by that in order to maintain the provisions of that agreement. If you extend that beyond January the 30th, then obviously that agreement is no longer valid. And so the applicant now is subject to paying the increased DCs from the region of York. So that's, in essence, what this issue is about.
So our next meeting is on 30th of January.
So by January 30th, the applicant would have had to receive Committee of Adjustment approval and fulfill whatever conditions are imposed as part of that approval.
So through the chair,
Yes,
I could make a motion on this application and draft sort of the comments in accordance with the requested conditions of staff, and then we can let the other members decide whether they are in favor or opposed, if you wish.
agreed. Yeah, and I think Ms. Payne was alluding to something similar, so yes, go ahead. Yes.
So through chair to committee, so maybe some wording, if I may. Prior to the final approval, the applicant shall obtain consent from the adjacent owner as it relates to the tree preservation. And then there could be a second one if we're looking to address the draining and engineering. So that could be worded as prior to final approval, the applicant shall address grading and engineering matters to the satisfaction of the Commissioner of Planning and Building Services.
So there'll be two conditions, but there'll be first or the second, not both.
It would be and if you would like to keep them separate, or if you may wish to combine the condition as one. But those would be two.
Because if you use the word alternatively,
in the second.
Oh,
it's an alternate, right? Yeah.
Sorry, the alternative would not be in the first one. It would
No,
just
not
be-
in the first one, the second one. Wouldn't it?
It would be and prior to the final approval of that application address.
They don't have to do both. They don't have to get consent from the neighbor. They don't have to get consent from the neighbor, move the French drain. Am I correct in assuming that? That's what.
Yes.
So they either do one or the other. And that's how we have to work the condition. We can't make them do both. I don't think that's fair. Okay, so Mr. Durenzi, are you willing to tackle that one? Yes, wait just a second.
And in fact.
We
yeah,
have
in
two
your
more comments.
conclusion, You talked about deferring.
I'm sorry, Ms.
In your
Payne.
conclusion, they talked.
Yeah, I
about-
read that.
yeah.
I already mentioned that to everybody, that both planning and
Sorry.
parks are recommending deferral. Yes, Mr. Bassi.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to planning, you feel that this doesn't create a precedent such that we're putting into the condition of approval conditions that are sizable enough that they should be handled by planning and parks prior to coming to the committee. So you don't feel that this is going to create some sort of precedence where we start doing that.
Through the chair to committee member, that's a good question as well. I think.
It's a gray area, I apologize, like the depth and the breadth of the wording is not creating this condition that we're kind of circumventing this process for the benefit of the applicant due to financial reasons.
So in our discussions with Parks and Heritage, they were flexible with having this as a condition as well of minor variance. The concern in this case is to have this addressed prior to final approvals. So if we are able to achieve this through a condition of minor variance in discussion with staff in Parks and Heritage, we are able to achieve that. If we're able to achieve that through a condition, they are flexible with having that.
Okay,
So based on that, prior to final approval is a key word to put in that condition, in my opinion. Yes.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not experienced enough in some of these areas, so I'll ask the committee, are there other checkpoints in the process that would ensure that these are completed before final approval? It seems like an ambiguous statement to me. So
It's pretty definitive to me.
well, final approval from the Committee of Adjustment, final
Yes.
approval for a building, like, what's the final approval?
All right, through you, Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
I may interrupt.
Yes.
We do not consider an application to be final and binding until all conditions are
Yeah.
met. Building department and all of our departments check with us to see if all conditions are met before any other application is continued with.
Thank you.
It's very specific.
I'm done. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Duretzi, you may proceed with your motion if we have no other comments. Ms. Payne?
Well, I would only try and keep in there written consent from the neighbor.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Duretzi will
yeah.
make sure
Yeah.
that we catch every little nuance.
Through the chair?
Yes,
I
sir.
would like to make a motion that minor variance application MV 24 31 located at 305 16th Avenue, part of block 24 brackets 3, be approved, subject to the conditions in the city's staff report, and in particular, that prior to final approval, the applicant must obtain written consent from the neighboring property to ensure that trees are not injured or destroyed, and they must seek that written approval from them. Alternatively, that the applicant must relocate a French drain, retaining wall, and other drainage works so that they are outside of the tree protection zone to the satisfaction of the Parks and Heritage Department, Building Services Department, and the Engineering Department.
Yes, the motion has been moved.
So just a minor
Do you have a
adjustment.
comment? You can have a comment on the motion.
Um,
Yes, of course.
The application, the reference number should be MV 24-32.
Correct.
You said 31.
I did?
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
So that being corrected, I just have a question to the Committee of Adjustment staff, if you got the wording of the new condition that has been added. Good. In which case, Mr. Duretsi's motion is tabled, and I would like a seconder, seconded by Mr. Gossi. All in favor? Yes,
Could you
sorry.
repeat the motion? Just, I'm sorry. I'm,
We will get Linda to repeat it then, or?
Oh, we have it on record.
Oh, I see, okay. Do you want me to, or I think it's best if you repeat it again. Mr. Gossi will repeat it. No, Mr. Duretsi will repeat it.
Yeah, through the chair, the motion to approve the application in accordance with the city's staff report conditions, as well as the condition that the applicant must obtain prior to final approval, written consent from the neighboring property owner to injure or destroy the shared tree. Alternatively, that the applicant can choose to relocate the French drain, retaining wall, and drainage swales outside of the tree protection zone to the satisfaction of the Building Department, Parks and Heritage, Natural Heritage Department, and the Engineering Department.
Are you satisfied with the wording?
thank you.
Yes, okay. So motion stands as moved by Mr. Duretsi and seconded by Mr. Gossi. All in favor? Approved. So we still need a motion to approve the rest of the 4 applications, and then we'll deal with the last application. And so I need a mover for the remaining 4 applications, 2 for severance and 1 for variances. Do I have, yes, Mr. Gossi, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to raise a motion to approve consent application 24-15 and minor variance application 24-83. Consent application 24-14 and minor variance application 24-31 at 305 16th Avenue, subject to terms and conditions in the staff report.
I wasn't quick enough, but did you mention all the file numbers correctly? I'm sure we can get that in, right? Okay,
That was
good.
24-15, 24-83, 24-14,
Yep.
24-31.
Perfect, thank you. Moved by Mr. Gossi, seconded by Mr. Duretsi, all in favor? The remaining 4 applications are approved. Now we're gonna deal with the application that was pulled aside, which is MV 24-65, again located at 305 16th Avenue. I would like Jim to maybe just, do you have anything additional to say on this particular application?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. If staff can bring up the presentation again, just to reiterate and remind staff about the location of this specific application relative to the remainder of the subdivision. If we can start there, thank you. If you can go, Linda, to the last one, slide 5. So, Mr. Chair, there's the exact location of the lot in question that is subject to this last variance, which includes 2 variances. One is for the gross floor area for the detached garage, to increase from 55 square meters to 64.8. And also the driveway width from 6 meters to 8.41 meters. And Linda, is there one more slide? So, Mr. Chair, there's the more detailed site plan, and you can see this is obviously a corner lot. This is obviously a corner lot intersection of 16th Avenue and the new internal new road. So the application before you specifically deals with a detached garage, which is obviously to the rear, to the south of to the south end of the subject property. And it does ask for relief to those two provisions, which is the GFA increase and the driveway width. And Mr. Chair, in our opinion, consideration has to be given to the following. Yes, you have these two requests, but notably, what you do not have before you is the fact that there are no variances for the side yard setbacks, either the rear or the westerly setback. There are no variances for the building height. There are no variances for the lot coverage, Mr. Chair. And there are no issues in terms of overlook, because you could see in terms of the elevations, Mr. Chair, the design of this does not provide for any openings to the south or to the west. And Mr. Chair, also finally, in terms of the driveway width, you could see that this proposed garage is pushed further back into the property, thus allowing the primary dwelling of this property to basically reinforce, protect, and enhance the streetscape. And that's part of the reason why, Mr. Chair, you limit the width of a driveway to 6 meters, is because you do not want to dominate from a streetscape perspective. So in this case, Mr. Chair, by pushing it back into the lot, it allows the prominence of the primary dwelling, being obviously the one that's being habitated in that's again the primary residential, to protect, maintain, and enhance the streetscape. And for those reasons, Mr. Chair, it is our opinion that the two variances requested for this detached garage are appropriate and satisfy the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Any comments on this from the planning department? You're the planner for this, yeah. Okay, committee members, do you have any comments?
No comments.
Yes, Ms. Payne,
Yes, I do.
please go ahead.
So we saw, a request for variance for this back in August.
For this back in
And
August.
at that point, we were
At that point, we were
doing daylighting. And I noticed that, the numbers don't really match what got approved back in August. For this new property, new application. So I'll just point that out, that the committee had approved, a lot area of 545 square meters, 5,866.33 square feet. And the numbers are different here. That's just an observation. And at the time, we were approving daylighting on this. So here we are with a request for an ARU, additional residential unit above the garage. And, you know, on a blank property, and it's very clear that the zoning requirement, what the zoning requirements are, and yet we're looking at a variance substantially more, and I have to ask the question, why can't you create your garage and ARU within the zoning bylaw requirements that Richmond Hill has set for this kind of addition? Through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant.
You can respond.
Well, Mr. Chair, obviously, I don't agree. I don't disagree with Ms. Payne in terms of, why don't we? In this case, we feel that it's a more appropriately designed garage with a residential component to it above. And in conjunction with that, the two variances that we're requesting, Mr. Chair, as I so elaborately explained, in our opinion, are appropriate under these circumstances in terms of any potential negative impacts. So yes, although we could obviously look at, obviously designing something to full compliance, we feel that to request these two variances in these circumstances are deemed to be appropriate without any notable impacts.
But it is an empty lot and you're aware going in that the city has set some limits on this kind of facility or kind of building structure. So apart from just wanting to have it bigger.
Are you questioning the location of the unit above the garage? Is that not allowed in the zoning bylaw?
Well, the maximum floor area of a detached garage with an accessory residential unit above
Right.
in the zoning bylaw is 55 square meters. Law is 55 square meters. So I want to put a garage, an ARU, I know I have 55 square meters to work with. Not 64.80.
No, I see your point. That's fine. You've made your point. They're asking for an increase of a certain amount.
And with that kind of thing, you might have an outdoor space for the people who actually live there.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Director.
Yeah, through the chair. I don't recall this particularly this lot that we saw this lot again, but maybe my memory just doesn't serve me correctly. And if we were at that time talking about daylight triangles and it was less than the current one that's shown, perhaps that's because it is adjacent to 16th Avenue and the region requires a much larger daylight triangle. So that's my comment with respect to the daylight triangle. With respect to the coverage that's being requested, the additional, they're asking for about 18% more. You're looking at a 592 square foot unit versus a 700 square foot unit. So it's like we're talking about another 100 square feet of livable space. And if you're trying to fit in, like a one bedroom, a kitchen and some amenity area, laundry and a washroom, 700 square feet would allow you to do that more effectively than 590 square feet. I think it just comes to the logistics of being able to fit it in within that space. So I don't particularly see an issue with the requested additional coverage, and I believe that staff are recommending a recommendation as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Rossi.
Yes, I acknowledge what is being said. Through Mr. Chair, I acknowledge what is being said. I do agree with you. However, given it's an additional residential unit, I think Mr. Duretzi is raising some good points. The value of having that available to somebody in Richmond Hill is something that the province is trying to push. I personally agree with that. I think having a little bit extra, depth in the backyard, if you had to remove that third car from the garage, for example, that's just a trade-off that the owner is making. I don't particularly have any objection to this.
Thank you so much. If we don't have any further questions, I would request a motion. Yes, Mr. Duretzi.
Through the chair, I would like to make a motion that file number MV-24-65, located at 305 16th Avenue, be approved subject to the terms and conditions in the city staff report.
Moved by Mr. Duretzi, seconded by Mr. Rossi. All in favor? 3 in favor. Opposed? 1 opposed, Ms. Payne. Thank you. It's approved.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate this. All the best for 2025.
Same to you.
Thank you.
No, we didn't have one, because it's only one application time, but.
Business.
Anything else? Before we move further, is there any other business that we need to address this evening officially in this meeting? I'm addressing Secretary Treasurer.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we did have a request for withdrawal
Okay,
for an application at 365 Neil Drive. This application made it through our intake and internal circulation.
mhm.
It did not get to external circulation or staff report. We are recommending a 50% refund.
So has it been withdrawn or is it coming back?
The applicant has asked to withdraw.
Withdrawn? Okay, so we spent 50% of effort as per your recommendation.
In terms of the work that has
The
been
work has
completed
been
on the
done,
file,
okay.
it was about 50%.
Well, taking your recommendation, I would request a motion about refunding on the application that was withdrawn from 365. What was
Neil.
your-
Neil.
Okay. Can we have a motion to Mr. Duretzi?
Through the chair, just before I do, is there a file number associated with the application?
Yes, there is. Just 1 second and I'll bring it up. This application's file number is MV 2470 365 Neil Drive,
NEIL?
NEAL.
NEAL, okay.
Through the chair,
You go ahead, Mr. Duretzi. You have-
I would like to make a motion that file number MV 24 70 located at 365 Neil Drive be withdrawn with a 50% reimbursement of reimbursement.
Moved by Mr. Duretzi, seconded by Ms. Payne. All in favor? Approved.
Thank you, committee.
Any other business?
Through you,
Can
Mr.
I
Chair,
just
there's,
point out a spelling error? In the last round, Lloyd is LLOYD